Hello, and welcome to Fic Time with Katie. Today we'll be exploring the world of Broe Holker, a ship that is made up of Joe Walker and Brian Holden from Team Starkit. I found a fic called Internet Play, and I'm going to read it to you, and I hope you enjoy it. Also, just before we start, if I continue to look over here, that's because my parents could be watching because the doors to my basement do not close, and if you hear any noises in the background, that is simply my washer going on because I am in the basement by the laundry room. Alright, let's get started, shall we? Alright. Brian's hands hovered over the keyboard. Was he really about to do this? He shifted uncomfortably in his chair nervously. He got up and double-checked that the lock on his door was in locked position. When he got back to his chair, he put his headphones on, typed in the URL, and let out the deep breath he didn't know he was holding. It wasn't that Brian had never watched porn before, but this wasn't his normal type of viewing. He pressed play, and on the screen appeared a moderately muscular man with blue eyes and light brown hair. The man on the screen started rubbing himself through fitted jeans. He then slipped his hand inside of his pants. Brian mirrored the man's motions. The man on the screen unbuttoned his pants and pushed them down slightly. Actually, it says done slightly, but I will say down, because I feel like it's a typo. Brian bit his lip and moaned at the sizable cock of the strange man. He quickly pulled down his sweatpants and went back to mimicking the man on the screen. A few minutes later, Brian felt himself nearing the edge. He threw his head back, quickened the speed on his hand, and moaned subconsciously. He was about to come when his door opened. "What's up, Brian?" "Holy shit, dude!" And then the door slammed shut. Brian quickly pulled his pants up, shut his computer down, and started pacing. He didn't even know who was walking in on him, or how, but he sure as hell hoped that they didn't see what he was getting off on. There was a soft knock on the door, and Brian braced himself and answered. There stood Joe, red-faced and avoiding eye contact. "I thought the door was locked," was all Brian could say. "That lock's been broken for weeks, dude. Remember Lauren got drunk and decided to shove steak knives in all the locks?" They nodded at each other. "Look, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. It's just I heard you say my name, so I thought you were looking for me." "Wait, you said my name while you were—" "Never mind, I should go." Joe stood there for a moment longer, his eyes drifting down to Brian's still half-hard cock. Brian noticed the glance and felt his dick twitch in excitement. Brian wanted to see where this would lead. "So I said your name. I didn't even realize." Brian blushed. "I'm really sorry if it makes you uncomfortable." "No," Joe answered quickly. I guess it's okay if you want to. I really don't know what to say." "Look, Joe, I didn't realize I said your name. I'm embarrassed about it. Can we just forget it ever happened?" Brian was worried he'd lose his best friend over something like this. "I don't think I can," Joe muttered. I've always kind of imagined you had a big, but now that I've seen it, I just don't think I can forget it. I don't want you to think—" "Wait, you imagine what my dick looks like?" Brian's eyes went wide as they met Joe's for the first time. Joe bit his lip and nodded. "That's not all I think about," he whispered. Brian stepped back into the room, beckoning for Joe to follow. He dropped his voice low and full of desire. "What else do you think about?" "I think about how you'd feel in my hand, in my mouth, or in me." Joe was gaining confidence with each word, and apparently, according to me, he's angry. "That's not thick." Brian groaned and leapt forward, crashing his lips against Joe's. "God, I want you so bad," he said against Joe's lips as he rolled his hips forward. Joe kicked the door down, not kicked the door down. That's not how it's happening. Joe kicked the door closed mere seconds before he found himself being pressed against it. Brian made his way to Joe's neck, tracing his hands along his chest. "You have no idea how much I wanted this." Joe threw his head back with a moan as Brian sucked on the sensitive skin behind his ear. "To have you touch me? God, please, Brian, touch me." Brian didn't need to be asked twice. He dropped to his knees, kept his eyes locked with Joe's, and unbuttoned Joe's jeans. He pulled them down along with his boxers. He broke eye contact to look at that, as he would describe it, impressive cock in front of him. He curled his finger around it, giving 2 pumps before running his tongue along every line, contour, and vein. When he reached the head, he wrapped his lips around it, the tip of his tongue tracing random patterns. Joe's breathing was labored, and his hands groped the door for something to hold on to. He eventually settled for Brian's shoulders. He couldn't help the slight roll and jerk of his hips, and Brian sucked him deeper and deeper. Brian moved his free hands into his sweatpants and started to stroke himself in time with his mouth. "Fuck, Brian, don't stop," Joe moaned loudly. If anyone else was in the manor, they must have heard him, but neither cared. Brian then moved the hands that was around Joe's cock to grip his ass. Guiding his hips faster, Joe tangled a hand in Brian's hair and started to fuck his mouth. "Shit, Brian. I'm close. Fuck." Brian hummed around Joe. Then he discreetly slipped his finger between Joe's cheeks and pressed against his entrance. Joe let out a final moan as he came down Brian's throat. The sensation of finally tasting Joe sent Brian over the edge as he came over his hand and in his sweat. Brian let Joe slip out of his mouth. Joe's knees gave out and he slid against the door to the floor. He softly ran his fingers through Brian's hair before leaning forward and kissing him. Joe loved the taste of himself on Brian's tongue. They pulled apart and rested their foreheads against each other. It was a few minutes before Brian broke the comfortable silence. "How fast is your recovery time? 'Cause I'm not quite done with you yet, Walker." Joe groaned at Brian's low, gravelly voice, a result from the greatest blowjob he has ever received. Joe tackled Brian to the ground and straddled him. He leaned down and lightly bit Brian's earlobe before whispering, "I'm ready when you are." And this has been Fic Time with Katie. Tune in next week when we review, or actually read, because I'm not reviewing, another fic. Cheerio.